Hi, this is the story of our church's meanderings through the wilderness, which became a trail towards carbon zero. It's not meant to be the only way, it's not meant to be the best way, it's just the way that we followed, and this may be of some practical use to you. The slide shows what our building looked like when we began this particular journey. It is an 1880-ish building, and for its centenary there was a revamp which removed the very large brown pulpit and replaced it with what you could see here. So this is where we began about 10 years ago. We did use the church for a variety of cultural events. Here is the Christmas Tree Festival from December 2014. And you can see the pews hardly made it easy for people to set up their trees and for people to browse and appreciate them. So there was a debate, what should we do to extend the options that were possible on our site. One was to consider adding a second floor to the halls at the back of the church, but this would still be tucked away off the street. So the second option was to use the space which was fronting onto the street, that is the church. And that is the direction that we took. And the result was, in April 2015, we began the building work of this renewal project, as it was called. In this slide you can see there are the windows that were single glazed, and then to the left one of the rather foreboding entrance doors that we had towards the street. The heating system for the church is evident here. These tubes, large electrically heated tubes, ran along the walls. Also they ran along the bottom of the backs of the pews at ankle height. For years, the argument had been that we could not remove more pews because of the heating system. But by 10 years ago, it became evident that these rather large, inefficient and expensive way of heating the churches just could not be sustained. So the argument switched round. The heating system had to go, and so the pews would have to go with them. Also, this local heating of ankles was inappropriate for the flexible use of the space that was envisaged. On July 23, 2015, the building was handed back to us by the builder. The windows you can see are now secondary glazed. There is a glass partition and an enlarged entrance porch to the street. The lighting is now low energy and LED. There are floor tiles to improve insulation. And the heating system is now a gas-powered one with wall-mounted radiators giving an open space for flexible use. This work had been completed about 6 months before the launch of EcoChurch, and when we saw the scheme, we felt that we had a head start in the building's element of it. But what had this done to our carbon footprint? When we looked back over the year, it was a shock to find that our energy consumption had actually increased. But our switch from electrical heating to gas heating, with its intrinsic lower emission at that particular time, meant that our carbon footprint had indeed dropped. But why had the energy increased? It was more comfortable, that's for sure, but the largest factor was due to the flexibility and welcoming wow factor of the church. It was used more often, and more people came to see things and do things. As an example, here is our first Green Communion. The congregation had indeed increased, and here we could all gather and celebrate creation care. Events like the Christmas Tree Festival took off all the more, and we could flex the arrangements as in this position here, where we're preparing for a service in the middle of the Tree Festival. By early 2017, we had also revamped the hall in a similar fashion with a new gas-powered heating system. The windows you can see at the end are now sealed double-glazed units. The hall was dedicated by Rachel Lampard while she was Vice President of Conference. In early 2019 we had an inspection for an energy performance certificate. We were delighted and rather surprised to receive a B rating. The inspector told us, and he was very, very experienced, that this was the first time he'd carried out an inspection of a church. A month or two later, we were able to install 14 solar panels on the roof of one of our halls. This was chosen after some care because it is south-facing and it is also unshaded. This installation is rated at 4 kilowatt peak power. It also includes a diverter, and that is the first preference energy source for the water tank, which in turn saves some gas use. We have not installed a battery system. Overall, we know after 2 years that we are getting about 4 megawatt hours per year from this generation. We can also see that we are saving about 1 tonne of carbon dioxide equivalent in every year. And roughly speaking, that's the equivalent of planting about 50 trees a year. Overall, we've seen a reduction in consumption in 2017 from 69 megawatt hours to 61 since then. We estimate the carbon footprint in 2017 was around 15.5 tonnes of CO2 equivalents. And what is it now? We're writing -1 here for the following reasons. The electricity is on a green tariff, and so we can count 0 as a renewable energy source. Our gas is entirely offset by the use of climate stewards arrangements. And our photovoltaics, we've already shown, save 1 tonne of CO2. The pie chart here is the example church on the website of Climate Stewards. The blue segment is the energy use. If this pie chart here were also representative of our church, then we could say we have covered the blue segment. But in addition, there's an extra tonne of CO2 equivalents, which would eat into this section otherwise. On that basis, then, you'd have to estimate there's about another 3 tonnes of CO2 equivalent that we have not met yet to become a carbon neutral church. Well, that's our meanderings through the wilderness to get towards a carbon footprint trail that goes towards 0. We haven't got there yet. We may still have a few years of wanderings ahead of us, but we're going to try. And I wish you well in your journey too.